Good morning. Today we are back to the study of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Um, Last month, after two presentations that Elmo gave, the introduction and the general presentation of the book, and then an introduction. Last month we started chapter one, which is I have not come to destroy the law. So, in chapter one, we talked about the three revelations. So, the first one, we talked about Moses, the Mosaic Law, the Ten Commandments that Moses received uh, from the superior spirits, or as they say in Judaism or in Christianity, directly from God. We know that he received from more evolved spirits. And then the other commandments that Moses created, that are actually 613 commandments, of which 10 are the divine commandments, and the others were created by Moses to discipline and to be able to control the exodus that lasted for 40 years, and they were in the desert. So the Ten Commandments: I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of house of bondage. You should not have other foreign gods before me, and so on. Number two, you should not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. You shall remember to sanctify Shabbat. You shall honor father and mother, especially today, Mother's Day, so that you may live long in the land that the Lord your God will give you. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not covet false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall covet neither your neighbor's house, nor his servant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor any of the things that belong to him. These are the Ten Commandments. And the you can see that the commandments are basically what not to do. The first two is to love God uh, and to love and do not take the Lord's name in vain, but it is mostly what we shall not do. Then we went through the teachings of Christ, with the gospel reminding us that Jesus did not come to destroy the law, which means God's law. He came to fulfill it, that is, to develop, to give it its true meaning, and to adapt to a great degree of humankind's advancement. Jesus gave us love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself as the two uh, most important and only relevant teachings, because by following this, he said, this is the whole of the law and the prophets, and by following this, we would find the kingdom of heaven, or a better uh, future for ourselves. Then we discussed Spiritism that came, and Kardec describes it as a new science that come to reveal to humans by means of irrefutable proofs the existence and nature of the spirit world and its relations with the corporeal world. Um, what Kardec tells us is that Jesus spoke in parables and spoke a language that and the teachings that was possible for people of his time to understand. People already more advanced than the people of the time of Moses, but still with a lot of material thoughts and inclinations. So many people, the Jewish people, were expecting the Messiah that would be the one that would dominate the world physically. That's why, of course, many of them didn't accept Jesus because they could not accept someone that first came from one of the poorest and despised regions of Judea, the Galilee, and also that would not take arms and expel the Romans and all these things. So, as Kardec tells us here, the law of the Old Testament is personified in Moses, the New Testament is personified in Christ. Spiritism is the third revelation, but is not personified in any particular individual. It is a product giving not by one person, but by the spirits, the voices of heaven, meaning they came to be with us and they don't come only from one source that can always be questioned, that can always be challenged. But if you have many spirits, and Kardec was very careful to share only the teachings that would come, the same teachings that will come through different mediums. Uh, and he says, as Christ said, I have not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. And Christ says that, he said specifically about the Ten Commandments, because all the commandments that were imposed by the Jewish people by Moses, Christ had no obligation to follow, and he went beyond those. Kardec says then that Spiritism says, I have not come to destroy the Christian law, but to fulfill it. Meaning, uh, Spiritism teaches us that nothing contrary to what Christ taught, but develops, completes, and explains in clear terms for everybody what he stated only in allegorical form. It is important for us to remember here that at the time of, of Jesus and after, there were a lot of studies of the teachings of Jesus and the secret doctrine that can be found in reality way before Christ, from the time of the Vedas in India and in China. You will find, if you go deeper, you find the secret doctrine studied everywhere. In Judaism, you have it under the Kabbalah, and you have many secret societies studying the secret doctrine throughout the days of Christianity. But Spiritism comes and puts it all out in the open. Why? Because we are ready to receive all the teachings. We are ready to understand the relationship between the physical world and the spiritual world, our continuity into the spiritual world, our life, survival of the spirit beyond the physical body, what happens on the other side, and how we have to evolve, how we evolve, what we have to do in order to evolve. And then we talked about the alliance between science and religion, where Kardec tells us very clearly that science and religion are the two levers of human intelligence. If you replace religion here, for those that are not comfortable with the name religion, which is it simply comes from the word Latin religare, reconnect with God. But because most people think of religion as an organized institution that imposes its truths and its dogmas, we can move away from the word of religion and use the word moral if we want. So the two wings of evolution, as Emmanuel teaches us, are the intellectual and the moral one. So science and religion are the two levers of human intelligence, because one reveals the laws of the material world and the other the laws of the moral world. But one cannot contradict the other, because being originated from God, that is perfect, if one would negate the other, one would necessarily be wrong and the other right, because God could not possibly be willing to destroy God's own work. So both have to be uh, carry the truth and um have to walk together. So Spiritism has three legs: science, philosophy, and religion or moral. Uh, it is a philosophy with scientific and moral aspects, or with the scientific or and religious aspects. So, Spiritism came to at a time where science was moving away from God, trying to deny the existence of God, to focus only on the material world, and and the church was fighting against it, trying to impose and and control the scientific aspects, but losing the power to control it like they had for centuries and centuries. So, Spiritism comes at a time to unite both science and religion, and and brings the scientific aspects into our moral evolution, uh, trying to adapt both. So Kardec said specifically, if science proves Spiritism wrong, follow science, because the scientific development, uh, the proved scientific development is what we have to follow. Again, science is based on trials and errors. There are a lot of trials and errors, so we have to wait until science reaches a conclusion that is real, uh, for us to leave something behind that Spiritism has taught us. But so far, there's nothing that Spiritism has taught us that has been uh, denied by science, the true scientific experiences. Of course, you have still many in the scientific world talking about the non-existence of God, that everything happens by chance. And Kardec addresses in the very beginning, when you see the universe is not a cause, is an effect. And if there is an effect, there has to be a cause. If there is a reaction, there has to be an action. So if you want to call the cause God or any other name, the creator, um, it is again, it's only names, but there has to be a beginning. And the beginning for us in Spiritism, we are very comfortable and very safe with the idea of God. Okay? Um, so again, Spiritism talks about reason, faith, reasonable faith. Our faith has to be based on reason, because if it's not, it can change. When our faith is completely based on reason, there is no way for us to change it. As I always like to give the example, reincarnation for us that study and understand the teachings of the spirits and all the literature brought in Spiritism is a fact. So it's not that I believe in reincarnation. I know that reincarnation exists, because something that you believe, you can stop believing. And nobody is going to convince me that reincarnation does not exist. Like nobody is able to convince me that the sun moves around Earth, or that the universe is not in movement, right? Because it is all proved scientifically. The reincarnation is proved scientifically, and we are going to have tomorrow a speaker at SGNY that has studied past lives and the reincarnate the proof of reincarnation on existing um, individuals, So he's going to talk about the studies he's doing at the University of Virginia. He works in the team of Dr. Alexander Moreira Almeida. His name is Eric Avila, and he's going to be talking about exactly that: proofs of reincarnation, the continuation of the studies of Dr. Ian Stevenson. So now we stopped last month on the end of this alliance between Spiritism and science and religion. So now we are going to start the Spirit's teachings, which are a series of messages from spirits that we are going to comment to read and then to comment. Okay, Philip, can you read for us?
Yes.
Thanks.
The new era, number 9. God is one, and Moses is the spirit whom he sent on a mission to make him known not only to the Hebrews, but to pagan peoples as well. The Hebrew people were the instrument that God used to deliver the divine revelation through Moses and the prophets. And the vicissitudes of these people were meant to impress the eyes and bring down the veil that had hidden the divinity from humankind. God's commandments, given through Moses, contained the seed of the broadcast Christian morality. However, biblical commentaries have restricted their meaning because, put into practice in all their purity, they would not have been understood. Nevertheless, the Ten Commandments remain the shining frontispiece, the beacon that should have illuminated humankind on the road it was to travel. The morality taught by Moses was appropriate for the state of advancement of the people it was called to regenerate, and these people, semi primitive with regard to the perfection of their soul, would not have understood that it was possible to worship God by means other than burnt offerings, or that they should forgive an enemy. Their intelligence, noteworthy from the materialistic point of view, and even from that of the arts and sciences, was morally quite backward, and they would have never have been converted under the rule of an entirely spiritual religion. They needed a semi-material representation, like the one the Hebrew religion offered them. Hence, burnt offerings spoke to their senses, whereas the idea of God spoke to their spirit. Christ was the initiator of the purest and most sublime morality, the evangelical Christian morality that is to renew the world, bring men and women together, and make them brothers and sisters. That is to enable charity and love for one's neighbor to blossom forth in all human hearts and create a common solidarity amongst all humans. A morality, in short, that is to transform the earth and make it a dwelling place for spirits more highly evolved than those inhabiting it today. It is the law of progress to which nature is subject and which is self fulfilling, and Spiritism is the lever that God is employing to enable humankind to advance. The time has come in which moral ideas must be developed so that the progress contained in the designs of God may be realized. These ideas must follow the same route that the ideas of liberty, their forerunners, traveled. However, one should not believe that this development will occur without struggle. No. In order to reach maturity, these ideas need to be discussed and argued over so they may attract the attention of the masses. Once attention is fixed on them, the beauty and sanctity of Christ's morality will touch people's minds, and they will become interested in a science that provides them with the key to the future life and opens to them the doors of eternal happiness. It was Moses who opened the way. Jesus continued the work. Spiritism shall finish it. An Israelite Spirit, Mulhouse, 1861.
So this first message comes from Israelite spirit, which is interesting, right? Because of course, he starts talking about Moses, which is the spirit that God sent on a mission to make God known not only to the Hebrews, but to the pagan peoples as well. Um, Again, we know that in Spiritism, Jesus, according to Spiritism, Jesus is the governor of the planet, has been responsible for the planet Earth since its creation. All the spirits that came through to advance the progress of humankind are emissaries of Jesus. And Moses was one of the emissaries, of course, like others, Socrates, Plato, that we read in the introduction, like Confucius. They are all messengers of Christ to bring his teachings. But this Israelite spirit, of course, talks about Moses to begin with, right? That Moses came with the idea of a unique God, one God only. So the Jewish were the first ones to embrace the idea of a single God. If you study the gods of the other pre-Jesus beliefs and religions, they 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 had many gods, many different gods. But if you go studying them, all of them had one God that was above the others. The others were like uh, minor gods. So in the Greek and Roman beliefs, you had Zeus, which was the main god, right? That the Romans named Jupiter. And then you have the other gods that were responsible for hunting, for agriculture, for war, and so there were minor gods. So the concept of one big, let's say, one big boss was always there. It's just that they had many gods. They call all of them gods. And if you think about the Catholic Christianity and the Catholic, right? They replace the other gods by angels. So you have one God and you have the other so-called gods that they call angels, right? Or they called saints also. Um, and again, it is all denominations or the attributions that we create to adapt to our limited understanding of the creation and the spiritual world. But Moses was the first to bring the concept of one God, and the Hebrew people were the instrument used because they were prepared for that. Of course, Jesus would know where to send uh, his emissaries according to the necessity, and he eventually came amongst the Jew also because they were the people that believed in one God. So for him to disseminate his teachings based on God's laws was easier for a group of people that already had the belief in one God. Of course, as the message started being disseminated, you have then Paul of Tarsus that understood the necessity to go with the message to the Gentiles and started the spreading of Christianity. But going back to this message from this Israelite spirit, he talks about Moses and talks about God's commandments, and that the commandments contain the basis of Christian morality. And he talks about how biblical commentaries have restricted their meaning because we had those that wrote the comments and the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, had to write their own readings and interpretations of the passages of Moses. So you read the Old Testament and the history of the Hebrews, you see a lot of stories based on their own experiences, and the commandments are there, but it is very much a material instructions and of punishments of an angry God. And then Jesus brings the concept of a loving God, but still, if you read the Gospels, they have a lot of descriptions of the life of Jesus and things that happened at the time of Jesus that, as Kardec pointed out for us at the beginning of the Gospel, are not relevant to our study. Our study, what matters is the moral teachings of Jesus, because those teachings are for forever, they are not changeable, and love one another, love the others like you would like them to love yourself, love God above all. These are immutable maxims that Jesus brought to us. And then he goes here explaining, right, that the time of Moses, the morality taught by Moses appropriate for the time of the people, and they still had to see things happening in the material world when Moses came to the mount, went to the mountain. They start adoring the golden calf, right? They created a golden an idol to adore, because we always needed to have a belief in something superior without really having in the beginning a very good notion. So he mentions about the burnt offerings that spoke to their senses, and the idea of God who spoke to the spirit. But then he talks about Christ, who was the initiator of purest and most sublime morality, that brought to us the teachings that should bring us together and make all of us brothers and sisters, which is what we are as eternal spirits. Talking about enabling charity and love for one's neighbors to blossom forth in all human hearts. And then he says that Spiritism is the lever that God is employing to enable humankind to advance. The message he brings to us at the beginning of the Spiritist dissemination. Remember, the Gospel was published in 1864, the Spirit's book 1857, so everything very new. And he tells us that the time has come in which moral ideas must be developed, so progress contained in the designs of God must be realized. But they will not occur without struggle. He advises us that that's going to happen, that in order to reach maturity, these ideas need to be discussed and argued, because people need to accept and internalize these ideas. They cannot be, ideas like this cannot be imposed, because if you impose one idea, if they find a different idea that looks more attractive to them, they change. So when you discuss, educate, and fully explore the ideas that Spiritism brings to us, we need to internalize them as part of our daily lives. And so once the attention is fixed, as he says, the beauty and sanctity of Christ's morality will touch people's minds, and then they'll become interested in a science that provides them with a key to the future life and opens to them the doors of eternal happiness. Again, he wrote this almost 200 years ago. We are still struggling to put them in practice, to understand them, to accept them, but it is a continuous work. The law is of progress, he says here. It is the law of progress, and to which nature is subject and which is self fulfilling. And we will continue to progress, maybe not at the speed that we would like, but at the speed that is possible for us. So that is the message that he leaves to us. Moses opened the way, Jesus continued the work, Spiritism shall finish it. This message came in 1861. Okay, so a second message now.
Number 10.
Yes.
One day, God, out of his inexhaustible charity, allowed humankind to see the truth, dissipate the darkness. That day was the advent of Christ. After that living light, the darkness returned. The world, after the alternatives of truth and obscurity, became lost once again. Then, just like the prophets of the Old Testament, the spirits began to speak and to warn you. The world is being shaken on its very foundations. The thunder shall resound. Stand firm. Spiritism is of a divine order since it rests upon the very laws of nature. And you can be certain that everything of a divine order has a great and useful purpose. Your world has lost its way, and science, developing at the cost of moral order and leading you only to material well being, has reverted to profiting the spirit of darkness. Christians, you know that the heart and love must walk hand in hand with science. The reign of Christ, alas, after 18 centuries, in a spite of blood of so many martyrs, that reign has not yet come. Christians, turn toward the Master who wishes to save you. Everything is easy for those who believe in love. Love fills them with ineffable joy. Yes, my children, the world is being shaken. The good spirits have told you this more than enough times. Bend under the foretelling breeze of the storm so that you are not knocked over. That is, prepare yourselves and do not be like the foolish virgins who were taken by surprise at the arrival of the bridegroom. This revolution that is being prepared is more moral than material. The great spirits, the divine messengers, inspire faith so that all of you, enlightened and fervent workers, may make your humble voices heard, for you are only a grain of sand, but without grains of sand there would be no mountains. Hence the words, we are so small, hold no meaning for you. To each his or her mission, to each his or her labor. Do not ants build their republic, and do not imperceptible animalcules raise continents. The new crusade has begun. Apostles of universal peace and not of war. Modern St. Bernards look and march ahead. The law of worlds is the law of progress. Fenelon, Poitiers, 1861.
So this message from Fenelon. Fenelon was a, a bishop of the Catholic Church. Um, he talks about the coming of the Christ, right? The spirits began to speak and to warn you that everything is going to change, that um, after the advent of Christ, after the time the living light, the darkness returned. So many centuries of darkness followed the persecutions, the the holy wars, the crusades, the Inquisition, all of those crimes committed in the name of Christ, in the name of Jesus, that were abuses of us uh, human beings who did not fully understand the message of Jesus. So, Spiritism came to bring us and to go deeper into the message of Jesus and to trying to teach us the real meaning of the words of Jesus and the spiritual world, explain the spiritual world, explain how we are all immortal, eternal spirits, and how we should live our lives to find happiness. So he talks about um, that Spiritism is of a divine order, that uh, we we should understand that the heart and love must walk hand in hand with science, meaning our minds, rational minds, should walk hand in hand with our love that is in our heart. So the two wings of evolution. We need to know more, to learn more, but we need to evolve morally. We need to fight against our imperfections to eliminate them. Again, the intellectual evolution is much easier because it's accumulating knowledge. The moral evolution is much harder because it involves eliminating imperfections and is always more difficult to eliminate than to add. So he says here, Fenelon, after 18 centuries and despite of the blood of many martyrs, the reign has yet not come. Christ's reign has yet not come, and 170 years later still hasn't. But it is more open out there, the discussion, the opportunity to learn from it, and the opportunity to disseminate it for those that want to hear. Um, so he ends us telling that this revolution that is being prepared, Spiritism, is more moral than material. Again, it focuses on our moral advancements. It uses the combination of science and philosophy to help us understand, to help us solidify our faith, and to help us understand the need of work on our moral evolution. But the revolution is focused on the moral, right? So the spirits will inspire faith in all of us, and it is important a reminder him here that he makes that to each his or her mission, to each his or her labor, meaning we are not too small, we are not irrelevant, we are important. Every difference we can make in our lives will make a difference on the life of others, directly or indirectly. So it is our responsibility as workers of Christ to disseminate the teachings for those that want to listen, not wasting time with those that do not want to listen, or for those that are truly interested in a healthy discussion and understanding. We need to be available. But more important, these days of so much mental struggles, we need to use the tools that Spiritism gives to us to help those going through uh, mental challenges, all the problems that we face nowadays with depression, with suicides, with disillusions, because Spiritism can give hope by explaining things, by making things rational and understood. Okay? Any comments, questions here? Okay.
Number 11.
Yes, third message.
St. Augustine is one of the greatest divulgers of Spiritism. He manifests himself almost everywhere. We find the reason for this in the life of this great Christian philosopher, who belongs to the mighty phalanx of the Church Fathers to whom Christianity owes its most solid basis. Like many others, he was uprooted from paganism, or rather, from the most profound impiety by the splendor of the truth. When in the midst of his excesses, he felt in his soul the strange vibration calling him back to himself, enabling him to understand that happiness lay elsewhere than in debilitating and fleeting pleasures. When finally on his own way to Damascus, he too heard the holy voice exclaim, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? He exclaimed, my God, forgive me. I believe I am a Christian. And from then on, he became one of the firmest supporters of the gospel. In the famous confessions that this eminent spirit left us, one may read the simultaneously characteristic and prophetic words he uttered after having lost St. Monica. I am convinced that my mother will return to visit me and give me counsel, revealing to me what awaits us in the future life. What a lesson in these words, and what a brilliant foresight of the future doctrine. This is why today, seeing that the hour has come to divulge the truth that he had predicted, he has become its ardent propagator and has multiplied himself, so to speak, in order to answer all who call upon him. Erastus, disciple of St. Paul, Paris, 1863.
Okay. Erastus, the disciple of St. Paul, was the one that helped in the Medium's book, helped Kardec a lot into the teachings that we receive in the Medium's book. Helmo mentions him a lot when we study the Medium's book. St. Augustine, one of the great divulgers of Spiritism, one of the great philosophers, he has a very interesting story, right? It took him 30 years to find Christianity. He was trying all the ways to avoid getting involved with Christianity because he was a very intelligent person. The Christianity that existed at his time, that was being taught to him, he found no attractiveness. He found it very shallow and boring. He was born in Tunis, in Tunisia. His they talk about Saint Monica here. Saint Monica, Monica was his mother, and she was a very devout Christian follower of the teachings of Jesus. But his father was not. He had other brothers and sisters, but his mother, from very early age, tried to make him a Christian, tried to make him get more involved into the teachings of Jesus. And she went after him wherever he went. He traveled many places. He lived a very mundane life in parties, in having fun, following what his father mostly was doing, and his mother never gave up on him, continue following him. She would go to all the churches that he was in the cities that he was and talk to the priests and ask them to talk to him to try to convince him, to make sense of him, and none of them could convince him because they didn't have the the intelligence, the ability to argue with him in a intelligent way, in a reasonable way. And finally, in one of his many, many trips that she would follow him without him wanting her to follow him, but she would go follow him anyway, she ended up in a city that had a bishop that was very uh, intelligent and very kind. And she finally convinced Saint Augustine or Augustine, right, to talk to this bishop and convince the bishop to talk to him. And finally, in this conversation, he found someone that could talk sense into Christianity, in the teachings of Jesus. He was the one that made him completely change his life, become a Christian, and become a philosopher of Christianity, right? We know the teachings of St. Augustine. He created a whole doctrine that many follow. Our present Pope, the American Pope, he's a follower of St. Augustine. He's part of the Augustinian uh, doctrine. So his mother finally convinced him, finally achieved, and immediately discarnated. She fulfilled her mission and discarnated. He was in early 30s, and that's something that he carried with him, the so-called guilty of never listening to her when she was alive, and when he finally listened to her, she went back to the spiritual world. That's why Erastus brings him here his phrase, "I am convinced that my mother will return to visit me and give me counsel, revealing to me what awaits us in the future life," meaning talking about life in the spiritual world in the famous Confessions. It is a um, very erudite teacher of Christianity, and for those that want to study more his teachings, is really worth. So Erastus tells us he has become its ardent propagator and multiply himself, so to speak, in order to answer all those uh, who call upon him. So he's recommending us to read and study St. Augustine also. That we have him in the Spirit's book, right? Okay. Any questions, comments here? Okay, the comment from Kardec now.
Has St. Augustine therefore come to destroy what he himself built? Certainly not. But like so many others, he sees with the eyes of the Spirit what he could not see as a man. His unconstrained soul sees a new light and understands what it could not understand before. New ideas have revealed to him the true meaning of certain words. While on earth, he judged matters according to the knowledge he possessed. But when a new light shone upon him, he was able to judge things more wholesomely. It was thus that he had to change his mind regarding incubus and succubus spirits, as well as the anathema that he had launched against the theory of the antipodes. Now that Christianity has appeared, and I've lost it.
Yeah, sorry.
Where am I?
Just a sec. Yeah, the computer's playing tricks here on me. There you go again.
I don't see it.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
incredible. Doesn't say. There you go. Nope. So, God, what's going on here? Sorry. don't know why this it doesn't allow me to reduce here. It doesn't stay. Uh, okay. No. Sorry. I don't know what's going on here. Let's see if it stays now. Okay. Antipodes. Now that Christianity in the middle of it. So you see, Philip?
Now that Christianity has appeared to him in all its purity, he can think differently about certain points than when he was alive. Thank you very much.
It doesn't stay. I don't know what's going on here. Uh, let me stop share for a minute. Okay, so we're back. Uh, it's there on the top.
Now,
Yes.
now that Christianity has appeared to him in all its purity, he can think differently about certain points than when he was alive, but without ceasing to be a Christian disciple. Without renouncing his faith, he can make himself the propagator of Spiritism because he sees in it the fulfillment of things foreseen. As a herald of Spiritism today, he leads us to a more careful and logical interpretation of the text. The same is occurring with other spirits who have found themselves in a similar position.
Okay. So this comment from Kardec goes into explaining, of course, as we go back to the spiritual world, we have a better understanding, a more ample view of the truths. So some of the beliefs that we may have when we are incarnated, we may change them when we are back in the spiritual world, or refine them. And so he talks about some of the beliefs that St. Augustine had when he was here incarnated, the incubus and succubus, which is are evil spirits, male and female respectively, who lie with persons in their sleep to have intercourse, right? Which is something that we learn no longer it's believed. And the antipodes is St. Augustine thought there was no reason to believe that humans lived on the opposite side of Earth, walking with their feet opposite ours, due to the lack of knowledge of the spherical form of Earth. St. Augustine's opinion was commonly held before science proved it otherwise. Meaning, at his time, he thought Earth was flat. And so there was no reason to be people on the other side below where they were. And actually, there are, as we understand the Earth being a round an sphere, right? And we have people living all around the world. So there is, let's say, antipodes, people living below us on the other side of the world. But this is more to a reflection that Kardec brings to us, for us to understand that if sometimes the teachings from the spirits contradict or say or have slight differences from what they said when they were incarnated, it's because they see things from a different perspective being back in the spiritual world. One very good example that we have is Brother X, or Humberto de Campos, who was a writer, famous Brazilian writer in the beginning of the 20th century, member of the academy, and not a very a religious person, and actually was someone that would make fun of religion and have arguments with religious people. And then when he went back to the spiritual world after a certain time, he started writing messages through Chico Xavier, and he's one of the most famous writers of the Chico Xavier's collection, together with André Luiz, with Emmanuel, uh, and um, and there is a series of books of which the first one is translated, called Good News, that brings his all new ideas. He talks about the teachings of Christ, passages of the time of Christ. He talks about his experiences in the spiritual world, stories that he has in the spiritual world, completely for those that read his work when he was incarnated. They are going to compare and say that it's not the same. Umberto de Campos, that it should, for those that do not want to believe, are going to say it's not the same. But of course, we have to understand that we change. We go back to the spiritual world. We acquire new ideas revealed to us by the spirits, and we may, if we come to describe what was going on with us, we have different beliefs, and we can disseminate different ideas, more refined ideas, more developed ideas of what we had here in the physical world. That's what Kardec is talking, and it's an advice from Kardec for us not to try to compare words of the spirits um, with words that they may have left when they were incarnated, because we are all evolving. And if we here, living here, read some things that we wrote in middle school or high school, we are going to find them very maybe very, infantile or very crude. But nowadays we have evolved, it changed, but it's still us, more older and more, and hopefully wiser, that are have new ideas, new understanding. So that's what Kardec was trying to tell us and teach us here. Okay. Um, so this is the end of chapter 1. Uh, then we start chapter 2, which is My Kingdom is Not of This World. Uh, Philip, can you read for us?
Number 1. Then Pilate, returning to enter the palace, and having made Jesus come to him, asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus responded to him, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my people would have fought to prevent my falling into the hands of the Jews. But my kingdom is not here." Pilate said to him, "Then you are a king." Jesus replied, "You have said it. I am a king. I was not born, nor did I come into this world except to bear the witness to the truth. Whoever belongs to the truth hears my voice."
Can continue.
The future life. With these words, Jesus clearly refers to the future life, which he presents in every circumstance as the end where humankind will end up, and as the object of people's principal concerns while on earth. All of his maxims refer to this great principle. Indeed, without the future life, the greater part of his moral precepts would have no reason for being. That is why those who do not believe in the future life, imagining that he is speaking only of the present life, either do not understand them or find them puerile. This doctrine, therefore, can be considered as the focal point of Christ's teaching, and it is placed toward the beginning of this book because it must be the goal of all persons. Only this doctrine can, justify the anomalies of earthly life, and harmonize them with the justice of God.
Okay. So starts here about the chapter is called "My Kingdom is Not of This World," meaning the Jews were expecting some Messiah that would come and become their king in this world, and Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world." Uh, and so when he's taken to Pilate, he's arrested and taken to Pilate. Pilate asks if he's the king, and he says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my people would have fought to prevent my falling into the hands of the Jews," because he was arrested by the Jews. Um, and then Pilate asks him, "Are you a king?" And Jesus said, "I am a king. I was not born, nor did I come into this world except to bear witness to the truth." So he's talking about my kingdom is not of this world. When he says my kingdom implies that he's a king, right? But in what sense we should understand the word king is that we're going to study later here in this chapter. So Jesus here clearly is referring to future life. Every teaching of Jesus leads us to the eternal life, life as eternal spirits. Because without the future life, without him mentioning future life, they would have no reason to for being his moral teachings, right? So for those who do not believe in future life, they they cannot understand or they cannot entertain the teachings of Jesus. Those that believe that everything ends in this life, they normally tend to think of those ideas as fantasy and things like that. So Spiritism had come to us to teach us about also the future life. It's going to bring reincarnation into the picture, right? And all the aspects of the spiritual life. So he starts by the first chapter, of course, talks about the Moses, Jesus, Spiritism, and the alignment between all of those. But then he starts the gospel, the teachings of the gospel, according to Spiritism, with "My kingdom is not of this world," with the future life, because he talks about us accepting and understanding the concept of future life is how we are going to understand and be able to follow the teachings of Jesus. Okay, continue.
The Jews had only very imprecise ideas regarding the future life. They believed in angels, whom they regarded as the privileged beings of the creation. But they did not know that human beings could someday become angels and share their bliss. According to them, observing God's laws was rewarded with earthly possessions, the supremacy of their nation, and victory over their enemies. Public calamities and defeats were punishment for their disobedience. Moses could not have said more than he did to an uneducated people comprised mostly of shepherds and who needed to be touched before anything else by the things of this world. Later, Jesus came to reveal to them that there is another world where God's justice follows its course. It is this world that he promises to those who observe God's commandments and where the good ones will find their recompense. The world is his kingdom. It is there that he is to be found in all his glory and to where he will return upon leaving the earth. However, adapting his teaching to the state of people at that time, Jesus did not believe he should give them complete enlightenment, which would dazzle them without edifying them, for they would not comprehend it. Thus, he limited himself to presenting the future life in principle as a law of nature from which no one could escape. Therefore, every Christian strongly believes in the future life, but the idea that many hold about it is vague and incomplete, and therefore erroneous on various points. For a great many, it is only a belief without absolute certainty, hence doubt and even disbelief. Spiritism has come to complete on this point as well as many others the teaching of Christ now that humans have matured enough to comprehend the truth. With Spiritism, the future life is no longer a simple article of faith, a hypothesis. It is a material reality demonstrated by the facts. Eyewitnesses have come to describe this reality in all its phases and in all its periperities in such a way that not only is doubt no longer possible, but the most commonplace intelligence can depict it in its true appearance, just as one could depict a country about which one has read a detailed description. And this description of the future life is so circumstantiated, the conditions of the happy or unhappy existence of those who are there are so logical that one must state, in spite of oneself, that it could not be otherwise, and that the true justice of God is contained therein.
So here, Kardec talks to us about the what Jews believed at that time and what was possible to disseminate to them, right? So they believed in angels, as we said, right? Privileged beings of the creation. We know through Spiritism that God created us all simple and unaware, simple and ignorant. We are all the same, so there are no special beings created. Um, but so the Jews did not know that human beings could someday become angels, meaning human beings one day will become perfect spirits, which is what they call angels. So, according to what the Jews thought at the time, they were rewarded by following God's laws. They were rewarded physically, earthly possessions. They should dominate their enemies. They should rule the world. That was their belief that they would receive by following God's laws. And of course, all things that went against them, calamities, defeats, were God's punishment. What it was a very uh, primitive understanding of a God that punishes or rewards. And as we study Spiritism, we understand that a perfect God could not punish, could not reward. The natural laws are there for us to follow or not, and our conscience is what's going to punish or reward us according to our behavior. So Moses could not have said more than he did because people would not be able to understand. They still need to understand things of the physical world. Jesus came when he knew that people were ready for his message. Um, Came to reveal to us, to them, the Jews, and to us, that there is another world. There is life continues. Um, that a world that if we follow God's commandments, we will find a recompense, we will find happiness. That this is the world that his kingdom. That's what when he said, "My kingdom is not of this world." His kingdom is of the happy spirits that have achieved eternal happiness through evolve to perfecting themselves. And so even him adapting his teaching to the state of people at that time, he could not give them complete enlightenment because it would too much light would blind them. So Jesus knew that they wouldn't comprehend. So he limited himself to present the future life in principle as a law of nature. So every Christian strongly believes in the future life, but many have a very vague idea, incomplete and erroneous in various points. The concept of heaven, hell, and purgatory. First heaven and hell. Then we had to create something in between because we found that people were not perfect, but they were not evil. So they had to go somewhere else, somewhere between. So we created the notion of purgatory. These are vague, incomplete, and erroneous ideas. So, Spiritism comes to complete the teachings of Christ, to at a time where we are mature enough to comprehend the truth, because now future life is no longer an article of faith, a hypothesis is a material reality demonstrated by facts. We have spirits coming and telling us the reality of the spiritual world, their lives in the spiritual world, their struggles, their rewards and struggles. Kardec would go after this book to publish Heaven and Hell. That half of the book is stories that the spirits themselves come to tell us, different types of spirits, happy spirits, suffering spirits, criminals, all types of spirits. That it's a very enlightened book that describes the spiritual world and what happens to many of those spirits, different aspects that they will find in the spiritual world. So it is proof that the spiritual world exists and how is life in the spiritual world. So the conditions of the happy or unhappy existence of those who are there are logical, that it makes sense to us, and we can see the true justice of God. Because when we see these spirits telling us what happened to them as consequence of how they lived their physical lives, we are going to see that following God's law, the natural laws, we are going to achieve uh, a happier state of mind, and by deviating from God's laws, we are going to face serious consequences and find ourselves in unhappy places back in the spiritual world. Okay? Any comments, questions here? Okay, we're going to stop here. We leave the kingship of Jesus for Elmo next week, for next month, sorry. Um, Again, as a reminder, tomorrow at 7 p.m. At our center, we are going to have Eric Avila. He works with the Medical Spiritist Association. He works with Dr. Alexander Almeida, and he's going to talk about claims of past life memories. What are the possible implications of these investigations? It is at 7 p.m. at our center SGNY, but if you cannot go and you want to listen to it online, you just have to log in the same login you use for our regular studies that we are going to we're going to transmit online. Okay, so you can listen to him. You're not going to see him, but you can listen to him talking. Okay, so that's tomorrow at 7 p.m. Next Sunday, which is the third Sunday of the month, we are going to be studying the Medium's book. Elmo will be back to talk about the Medium's book. Happy Mother's Day for all. And Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John, for hosting our class today. And thank you, Philip, for reading for us. And everyone who is here, we thank you and we wish you happy Mother's Day. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Gospel according to Spiritism, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. And those would be the three revelations, the alliance between science and religion, and the Spirit's teachings, and my kingdom is not of this world. Moses brings the Ten Commandments as the initial message and foundation of the one God. Christ brings love and the morality aspects, and Spiritism brings a refined and deeper understanding of the pure moral teachings of love, peace, and charity toward everyone, plus the law of progress. Our responsibility is to use the tools that Spiritism gives us to help others, to bring inspiration, charity, and hope. St. Augustine had a life-changing epiphany and became one of the strongest supporters of the gospel teachings and a propagator of Spiritism. The justice of God refers to the future life of the eternal Spirit. Jesus brings in the doctrine of reincarnation as a focal point of the teachings for those that will eventually comprehend it as a true belief and reality. Life continues as a law of nature. Spiritism comes to advance these teachings, which is the proof. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all of our participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, our friends, loved ones, and co-workers. And may we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.